Hey, welcome back again. This is another installment of Pages Promotions Virtual Book Festival Autumn 2020. This is a production of Indie Reads TV, and we find our home on CNM TV in Troy, Michigan. We are tremendously grateful that they've given us this airspace to share books and authors with you. Today, we're going to be talking with Andy Lockwood, who is an amazing, creepy, spooky, wonderful author. And he's going to read something that he's never read out loud before. So, Andy, first of all, tell us a little bit about you and your authorship background, if you would.
Well, I have been writing professionally since about 2013. That was when Empty Hallways came out. That was my first novel. And I have released 3 more since then and a number of short stories in various places. So it's all in the supernatural / paranormal / horror genre. It's kind of where I just like to stay. I'm used to it. They know me here.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about the piece that you're going to read today.
This is one of my earlier pieces. It was a submission to an anthology that was for, actually, what was, it was the PKD charity in the UK. I made some friends over there, and she happened to be editing together an anthology and asked if I wanted to contribute at all. And I was like, sure. So the rules were she was going to draw out of a hat and assign pictures to people, and you had to write a story based on this picture, and you were capped at 1,000 words.
Okay, that sounds like a fun challenge.
It was. It was a very interesting challenge. I got a picture of a very snowy, wintry landscape, and that was the limit. So like I could just do anything I wanted from there, and actually the story came out pretty quick and easy.
How many times did you have to edit it?
Oh my God. The first time, I think the first draft was 2,500 words, somewhere around there, and had to keep paring it down and go like, oh, well, I like this scene, but it can't stay. It has to go. So I think I still have a close to 2,000 word version out there.
Okay.
But the 1,000 word version is canon. That's the official one.
Awesome. And that's the one you're going to read today.
That is the one I'm going to read today.
I'm going to give you the air, and you go ahead and start anytime you're ready.
All right. Thank you very much. This story is called Lake Effect because we are from Michigan, and everybody in Michigan knows what a lake effect is. Yeah, I know that's kind of an awful phrase to a lot of people that we're going to start hearing a lot more soon. But let's get started. The Department of Natural Resources truck jostled and jumped, pitching its 3 occupants back and forth inside the cab. The uneven terrain was rough at any speed, shifting the truck back and forth like a carnival ride. It wasn't a route that accommodated large vehicles in the best weather, yet here they were in the worst of it. Old Charlie had given them a calculated look as they headed out following their lead. They knew what he wanted to say, expected him to say it even, but he just glared as the truck passed and went back inside his store. Stupid people think they can outsmart the weather around here. He coughed out more than once. You want to be smart, then don't be stupid. You see the weather turning, you get to shelter. Winter's not to be trusted. And he was right. He had learned the hard way. Old Charlie lost 3 fingers and part of a foot to frostbite many years earlier. He learned his lesson and cautioned strangers heading into the woods and the trails, a living, breathing public service announcement. In the 2 years Jason Hofstetter had been partnered with Rich Tompkins, guarding the northeast forests of Michigan, they'd seen it happen too often. They'd seen people stranded, lost, frostbitten, and nearly frozen to death. It was often attributed to lake effect conditions. Storms would build up as they crossed Lake Michigan and pummel the region till they ran out of steam. Smarter men would have waited out the storm. Sergeant Tompkins didn't believe in waiting. He believed in acting. and he'd said so almost as many times as old Charlie had said his bit. But if they didn't go looking for this, a girl could be dead by morning. The weekend was over, and Jason was ready for a quiet end to his work week. There would probably be a call or two, but he anticipated the remainder of his week would be spent behind his desk. Less people means less trouble. Jason smiled and looked at the paperwork that still needed to be processed from the weekend. Nothing awful, mostly people caught trying to have their fun on the cheap without proper permits. Most of what he did with his week was keeping order in the forest. Bringing law to the lawless, Thompson liked to call it. He walked with the same swagger Jason had seen in countless westerns. Tompkins would probably have spurs if they weren't against dress code. Even then, Jason could almost hear them when Tompkins walked past. Still, not all bad company, he reminded himself. The sergeant was a bit full of himself, but a good teacher. 2 short years, and Jason was impatiently awaiting a promotion in a field office of his own. The door opened, bitter cold air trailing the walls of the office, circling its victims before diving into the room. Jason shuddered even before he had a chance to look up. When he did, his heart went as cold as the room itself. A young man shuffled into the room. He was pale white, his lips and circles underneath his eyes dark, a bluish purple in the cold light. Every inch of him looked to be covered in a layer of permafrost. Help. The word was barely a whisper. Jason was already moving, grabbing the fire blanket from the first aid cabinet and calling for the sergeant. They got him settled in, offering him hot tea to help with the process. Call an ambulance. He needs real attention. Jason nodded at the command, but the young man grabbed his hand. We have to find Robin. They strained to hear. His voice is almost as lifeless as his touch. Jason pulled his hand away, rubbing the warmth back into it. Where did you see her last? The boy only shook his head. Don't know. Need to show you. Jason looked at his commander. Tompkins had a stern look on his face, shaking his head slowly as if listening to a recommendation that he wasn't thrilled with. Finally, he cocked his head and raised an eyebrow. He grabbed Jason, pulling him away. Get the truck heated up. Pack some extra blankets and double the first aid. But, sir, no buts, Hofstetter. The winter's coming, and if that girl looks anything like him, we're already on borrowed time. They kept an eye on the kid as they drove. They tried asking him more questions, but he would only shake his head and point. No time. Find Robin. Jason was worried about the shock or hypothermia. He only knew how to keep people stable till help arrived. The kid was looking worse all the time. He was still pale, too pale, but now he was covered in a sheen of sweat. His joints were stiff, still, and frozen as he pointed, guiding them at trail points, leading them deeper into the woods. Everything was covered in radiating white. It always reminded Jason of Dean Martin's Marshmallow World. The clouds were getting thicker, making it hard to spot anything out of the ordinary. It was too dark to see clearly in sunglasses, but too bright to see well without them. 10 miles of steady jostling brought them to a clearing that ran toward both edges of the horizon. It was a place where the pipeline had cut through long ago, where later phone poles were put to follow the same routes. Only grass and weeds grew here now, like an ugly scar through the middle of the forest. There. Both officers turned to the boy, who pointed down a trail that followed the edge of the tree line across the field. Jason stared and leaned forward, adjusting his glasses. Through the windows, the world was white and scorching his eyes unprotected. It was too bright to see anything clear. Tompkins urged the truck forward along the trail. Just off the trail, they could see a large mound, one that seemed out of place in the clearing. Sergeant let the truck roll to a stop. They both stepped out into the cold, meeting at the driver's side, staring at the mound. It was a large heap of snow, perfectly sculpted. It was close to 2 or 3 feet high, and jutted out another 4 feet where it tapered to nothing. It could have been a large bush or a boulder by the look of it, but both officers knew there was nothing on the pipeline, no foliage and no outcroppings. Jason pulled on his gloves. They were thick and padded, going over his sleeves of his coat and halfway up his arm. He began dusting at the top, watching the powder cause a small avalanche, building and cascading down the slopes of the mound. He squinted, scrutinizing what lay underneath the surface of the snow, then stumbled back. Sergeant Tompkins braced his shoulder, but Jason heard his breath just the same. A face was buried under the snow. Tompkins stepped forward, and together they pushed the snow off the body so they could have a better look. It was a girl, and they assumed her name was Robin. She looked about the same age as the boy, in a thick wool hat and parka. What bothered them more than knowing they were too late was the look on her face. When a person freezes to death, they relax. Their face is calm, and other than the bluish color, they appear to be sleeping. Robin was not sleeping. Robin was shielding her eyes away from something she didn't want to see. One hand was up and held palm out away from her. Against all reason, it appeared she was frozen at the moment of her death. They were so stunned by her appearance that they almost didn't notice that she was holding on to something in her other hand. It was a glove. The glove led to an arm, which led to another body. They quickly uncovered the second body. The boy hadn't mentioned anything about anyone else. Oh, Jesus. Jason couldn't suppress it. He stepped back and unbuckled his sidearm, his focus now on the truck. Calm down, Hofstetter. There's no reason to panic. But Jason heard it, the momentary hitch in the sergeant's throat. This was a perfect reason to panic. Robin was arm in arm with a boy, the boy, who shared the same desperate look on his face. He was half turned in her direction, his teeth clenched as if he froze mid-word. They were back to back, kicking their legs out in all directions. They were surrounded. Jason said it, but he didn't believe it. Surrounded by what? He turned without another thought and marched back to the truck. He pulled open the back door and withdrew his sidearm at the same time. A puddle cascaded out the door and splashed onto the icy trail. Jason was pointing his gun at no one. The blankets were wrapped around nothing now. They were soggy and collapsing in on themselves like old wreckage. Jason could feel his brain catch fire as he tried to process the information. Nothing was making sense. Officer, just what in the... But Sergeant Tompkins didn't finish. He saw the same thing Jason did. His brain was dealing with the exact same dilemma now. What the... He repeated. Sergeant? Jason turned to him, hoping there was an answer. One that made more sense than his brain was providing. Something moved in all the white beyond Tompkins' shoulder, and Jason swung his gun. He wanted to call out. He wanted to make sure that the sergeant was seeing the same thing. A small voice in his brain said it could be a mirage. It was rare, but it happened. The only sound that escaped his throat sounded small and panicked and very unhappy, being pushed out of its hiding place. Jason turned in place, his sidearm swaying to cover all the angles in his field of vision. Standing directly in front of the truck and in clear sight of the bodies were the boy and Robin. The boy had the pale complexion and the permafrost all over him again. The girl had the same crust of winter over her. Beyond them, dozens of other faces stared. They were all pale, all covered in white frost. Sergeant? I'm sorry, Hofstetter. Jason tried to turn and jumped the instant the shot rang out. Sergeant Tompkins' body collapsed beside the truck, dead by his own hand. The blood steamed, melting away the snow like acid. Jason tried not to panic himself. He tried to see a way out of this, but there wasn't one. Even if he could make every bullet count, he was still gravely outnumbered. They shuffled closer, watching with cold eyes that burned with hunger. Jason Hofstetter pursed his lips in sadness and frustration and bent his elbow, turning the sidearm inward. He closed his eyes and hoped that there was something better waiting on the other side. In the clearing on the pipeline, there was only the ring of a second gunshot and the low purr of a truck engine. Old Charlie was right. Winter was not to be trusted.
Yay! Thank you very much. See, we're all, you know what we need to do? We need to start doing sign language clapping because everybody has their microphones turned off. So for those of you who don't know, this is clipping in sign language. There we go. Good job, Andy. Wow. I love your work. I really enjoy your work. Nice, Andrew. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Andy?
Did you take it
Questions,
further?
comments?
What's that, Andrew?
Did you take it further?
I expanded on what exists there in the middle, mostly the appearance of the boy and the journey to the destination. I didn't push further than that. I'm a big fan of leaving things unknown.
Yeah, we know.
Those are my favorite stories, my favorite movies, the ones that don't explain what it is.
Uh-huh.
Don't
Yeah,
sound so bitter,
this is
Diana.
why we want you. Yeah, this is why we want you to write sequels, Andy, because there's more we want to know. You know,
I
House
know.
of 13, for instance. Yeah.
There is a sequel. It's not ready yet, but it's out there.
Yeah. Okay.
This is why one of the things we should have done for this is either the 30th or the 31st had a Halloween read off, and everybody bring their favorite short story that has some terror associated.
You know, we could still do that. I have time on the 31st. We could still do that. But some of us have Halloween traditions. So
Do we?
I am currently building one of those big the PVC launchers in case we have trick-or-treaters. So.
I was gonna say I stay locked up in the back of the house. And we only do trick or treating if JP's home, and then he gets to do it. I'm hiding in the back of the house.
I understand.
Does anybody have any other questions or comments for Andy on his reading or any of his work, really? We've got a couple minutes.
So was this kind of in some sort of way something like a zombie story?
A little bit of zombies, Wendigo, if you've heard of those. I grew up being terrified of something called a snow snake.
Let's not even go there, Andy.
The urban legends, rural legends, I guess, is it's a white snake that only comes out in the winter. And the only way you can spot it is it's got two blue eyes.
Mm-hmm.
So
is that like the red dwarf, except for winter?
Kind of.
Yeah, and people wonder why I don't like to walk in the snow. There you go.
Well, it was also reminiscent of the White Walkers inside of the books,
which did not exist when I wrote this story.
I thought it was interesting.
George R. R. Martin owes me money. That's what I think.
Agreed.
If you got the copyright, it's time to start putting it out there. Because even the lineup, if you read his books in the first book where they introduce it, even the lineup that comes forward is very similar to what you described. So I think he read your story, and you've got a good case.
He stole it.
Yeah.
I really, really like too, though, just the whole concept of snow and winter and cold being just so claustrophobic. I moved from Kentucky to Maine when I was a kid, and I remember just being like, what? Where am I? I want to go home. I don't like this. It doesn't melt till like June here. What's wrong with these people? And even if you think about like when it's a really heavy snowfall, how just silent it is outside. And so I really like the way that came across. I really, because I kind of relate to that, but I loved it.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I noticed too, Andy, is I know that I gave you a note in Threshold about sound. But in this piece, you did a really good job of ignoring sound. And I think that was a big part of the story.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was good. Anybody else?
Hi.
Go ahead, Nicole.
Hi.
Has anybody ever read White by Tim Levin? He's a British writer. White is kind of the whole what's out in the snow type thing, and it's one of the best things I've ever read, and it just your story kind of harkened to that. So.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I will have to read that now.
Yeah, it's good.
Andrew, since you're looking it up, can you put the link on our Facebook page, please?
It's not immediately evident.
Yeah, sorry, I guess I should have done that.
That's right. He'll find it. He's a detective that way. He'll find it. Do we have any more questions or comments for Andy? We're getting close on our time today.
I just thought it was ironic that there was a black cat moving in and out of your screen.
Yeah,
Agreed.
was that Void, Bailey? Walking in and out?
Void. Yep.
Yep,
Yeah.
that was Boyd. She's
Yeah.
down here crying and chirping. She wants to be the tallest, so you need to come down and take her to the ceiling.
Right.
I think it's fabulous. You have a black cat named Void. It's just perfect. Anybody else? Okay. Yep, go ahead, Andrew.
Just a note, this may take a little while to find. It may not be easy in print or on the internet anymore. I'll find it.
I know.
It's just a matter of, I'll probably have to go a little deeper than what the normal internet allows. But if it's out there, I'll find it. But by Tim Levin. Yes?
Tim Lebon, Lebon.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, I was doing combinations.
So, Andrew, if you could, when you find it, if you could list it on the Facebook page, I would love that.
That gets us closer. Okay. I'll be there
Awesome.
in a moment. So we'll find.
Yay, you're the best. Andy Lockwood, thank you so much for reading tonight. I really appreciate your
Well, thank you for
time
having
and
me.
your
And
story.
Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Everybody watch the Facebook page because we're going to have Andy back toward the end of the month and we're going to do a full-on interview with him. Lots of questions and answers. So come on back and, you know, pick his brain. This will give you some time to look up his books and then come back with some questions. It'd be awesome. In the meantime, we are doing a wacky trick-or-treat game on our Facebook page and through our website. So the idea is authors are going to be posting links, and attached to those links are going to be virtual candy. Collect as many as you can, stick them in your pillowcase, and at the end of the month, the person who collects the most virtual candy receives a Fire HD tablet. So it's a pretty snazzy gift. So send out the word to everybody and let everyone know this is what we're doing. We're doing these wacky Zoom things all month long. We're getting to know some really cool authors and their books. So I look forward to coming back and seeing all of you again. We will post the videos on YouTube. They will be airing next month on CNN TV in Troy. So again, I want to say thank you. Let me see if I can do that. There we go. Thank you, Andy. I appreciate you coming out and seeing us. And we will look forward to having you back at the end of the month. Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.